the purpose of today and the purpose of this masterclass is very much around allowing you to understand the concept of strategic workforce planning. And more importantly, what does this mean for us in the context of the GCC labor market? So there are quite a few things we're going to be talking. The masterclass is roughly for an hour and a half, but I know we've started a little bit later, so I'll try and finish it in an hour and 15 minutes. But really, this is a space for you. So as long as you're able to share your ideas and talk and speak, feel free throughout the session to put your questions in the chat if you want, or if you want, you can also unmute and share your thoughts, ideas, things like that. But the idea is, by the end of the session today, you will walk away knowing three main areas. First one is, what is the labor market in GCC looking like right now? And more importantly, why is workforce planning a key priority? So what is it that's made suddenly so many organizations in GCC really keen to start thinking about workforce planning? It has always been in place, but more so there is an importance and a focus on it right now. Why is that? So we're going to have a look at that. Then in the second part, we are going to look at what exactly is the meaning of strategic workforce planning. And there are various elements to this. And we'll unpin and unpick each of those. And then finally, the last thing we're going to do today is look at some of the tools that you could use for workforce planning. So that's broadly what's on the agenda today. Maria, you've got your hand up. Is that because you have a question or is that from before?
No, that is from before. Sorry.
It's all right, no problem at all. All right, so let's get started. Very quickly, if I were to ask you all, what's happening in the GCC labor market right now? What are some of the trends? What are some of the trends that you are observing? And I'm going to show you some prompts which might help you think through what are these sorts of things that are impacting the labor market. But before we get into those labor market trends, keep thinking about that, keep reflecting on that. There are two things I want you to discuss. First of all, where do you get your talent from? Now, the moment I ask this question, some of you may have some sort of answers, but before you start thinking about your answers, I want you to tell me, what do you mean by the word talent? How would you define talent? What does your organization look at talent for? What's talent? You can put it in the chat or unmute and share. What does talent mean? Who is talent for your workplace? Yeah, complete silence. Colleagues, you have complete control over your microphone. Share with me, what do you think talent might mean? Okay, I'm going to prompt you a little bit. Go on, Adil. Give it a go.
Okay, thank you. I would say is the aptitude or the ability maybe for an individual that can complete the tasks based on what is defined for them to do.
So this definition which you are giving for talent pretty much can apply to any and every employee in your organization who is capable of doing their job. So this is an inclusive definition of talent. So some organizations will define it exactly as you've defined it, which is, for us or for our organization, talent is a single individual or a group of people who are able to do their jobs to the best of their abilities. So some people look at it like that. Others will say it's a natural skill or a natural ability, whether it's in the field of knowledge. So we got a definition in the chat coming through. It's a natural ability, whether skill or in the field of knowledge. And that is another definition of talent, because some people feel it's ingrained. You can't really teach talent. It is something that's within you. It's your potential inside. Both of these are what we call as inclusive definitions. There is one exclusive definition though. Some organizations will say, for us, those people that are able to do their jobs is our workforce. For us, talent is something different. Talent is those individuals who are either star performers or have exceptional potential. And so these are more exclusive. They are your strongest employees. Whether that's because they are performing the best or whether that's because they have a lot of potential and a lot of skill set to grow and perhaps take on leadership positions in the future, some organizations identify their high potential people as their talent. And this definition is way more exclusive. So it's worth thinking about when you think about your organizational context. Do you adopt a more inclusive definition of talent, or do you adopt a more exclusive definition of talent? So if you have an inclusive definition, can you give me a quick thumbs up? Where everyone in your workforce. So we've got Adil who's saying that's for their organization. How about for the rest of you? Sharanya, how about for you? Maria, Ruhi, Ashwati, Sidra, Smita, how about for you guys? Yeah, mixture of thumbs up, yeah. So it's worth thinking about it because then when go on, Ashwati. Sorry?
I think it's mixed. I won't say it's like inclusive or like it depends on everyone. No, so I don't
It
think so.
it does, but when you think about your organization, does your organization say every employee is talented and therefore all employees are our talent pool? Or do you look at them as only those people who are exceptional at their work?
That's very difficult to answer.
Exactly. And that's where the distinction lies in the definition. Because some organizations will say everybody, we only hire the best, and therefore everybody in our workforce is our talent pool. Whereas others will say, nope, it's not. So that's our workforce. They are not our talent. Our talent are the high potential, the high performers, the stars of our workplace. So before you get into this, think about that. Now, once you identified how you're defining talent, it's worth thinking about, okay, so where do you get these people? If it's the more inclusive nature, as in everybody's talent, well, where do you get them from? And here there are two answers. Either it could be internal from within the organization, external from outside the organization, or poaching where you get it from your competitors. So that's where you generally tend to get your talent from. If you have the more inclusive definition, pretty much you're going to get your talent from wherever it's available. But if it's a more exclusive definition where these are your high performers or your shining stars, then perhaps it's quite likely that you have that internal focus when in terms of where you're getting your talent from. Adil, I saw you go off mute there. Did you have a question?
No. I was just checking that I wasn't interrupting.
No. Did you want to say something or share something there?
No, if then yes, based on my understanding or the selection of inclusive, yes, we have different options of recruiting and finding or selecting talents, and it could be from third party recruitment agencies, it could be referrals, it could be placing ads in
Yeah.
recruitment portals.
Yeah.
And sometimes it could be within if they meet the necessary criteria, then yes, we would prefer, of course, that any promotion or talent pool is selected within as a preference
Yeah.
before moving out. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and this is precisely the point that I was trying to make over there. Thank you. So all those options that you gave at the start were all external ones. Go ahead. Somebody is unmuted there. Go on. Who is that?
Hello, good
Hi.
afternoon. I need to
Good.
know who take the decisions for the exclusion or not for the employees, because sometimes I think the general manager, or sometimes I feel that it is the head of the HR. So who have the right decision to take that the whole employees are talent or not? What do you think?
So Dina, is that you?
Yes.
So Dina, in this case, mostly it is an acceptable. So whether it doesn't matter who defines it, it has to be agreed by everyone. So sometimes it's a senior manager that do this. Sometimes it's the HR practitioners that do this, and sometimes it's the mentality or the mindset in the organization or its culture that does it. So it can significantly depend from organization to organization. There's no one right answer there.
Thank you for explanations, because I think the actions that take from the organizations had lead for the final resolutions, because sometimes the companies lead the whole operations and give the opportunity for the whole employees, and sometimes not make selections.
Yeah.
So I think the practice that done in the organization explain the actions regarding that.
Exactly. And this is what I'm going to explore a bit more because this is why workforce planning is important. Okay, I've got somebody else who's gone off mute. Go ahead. Who's this?
Yeah, it's me, Aisha.
Yeah, go on, Aisha.
So in my previous position, the position name was actually talent acquisition coordinator. So I guess it's like everyone is a talent there. Even we used to
That's
tell them like if we are holding someone, we used to tell them like we are holding you on our talent pool, or we used to use such phrases actually.
Yeah, exactly. And so this is it. That's the more inclusive version of it. So thank you for being able to distinguish that. That is a starting point. Thank you so much, Aisha, for that. So it's worthwhile knowing this because you might go seeking for your talent outside your organization, which is where UAE labor market or the GCC labor market comes into play. Or you might start saying, well, let's look inside first. We are going to give a priority to our internal talent and move them up first. And so then the focus is slightly different. Both of these are a key part of what we would call as the labor market, the internal as well as the external. Now, what are some of the drivers of the labor market, some of the features over there? So there are four main things that is impacting a lot of the GCC countries. Now, I've said UAE over here, but this is equally true for any other GCC country, whether you talk about Saudi or Qatar or Iraq or Lebanon, doesn't matter. There is pretty much these four things which is driving what's happening and what's changing in the labor market, which in turn makes strategic workforce planning a key priority. So the first thing over there is AI in the workplace, automation, machine learning, robotics, technology, and the fact that there is an evolution in the nature of jobs that are in the labor market. And so some organizations are going at it full speed, others are going at it much more relaxed pace. Whichever way your organization looks at it, there is no escape from this revolution of technology. And therefore, we need to be prepared for this. And strategic workforce planning process is that process which starts getting you thinking strategically about what might be your organization's needs from its people in the future. So that is one key driver of why strategic workforce planning is more crucial than now, more crucial than ever right now. The second thing is the nationalization agenda. So in UAE we have Emiratization. In Saudi there's a big push for Saudiization, and pretty much every GCC country you will see that there's a big push for nationalization. And so it's not so much the fact that nationals are difficult to find or talent within nationals is difficult to find. It is more the fact that organizations have to start thinking about where are they going to source them from. If they do manage to get them on board, how are you going to retain them? How are you going to develop them? How are you going to prepare them for the future needs of the organization? So these nationalization agendas as well, whether where you source your talent from or how you retain and develop your talent, both of those have made some of the strategic workforce planning concepts very, very crucial. So this is where nationalization comes in. I'm going to take a quick pause over here and see if anyone has any questions on either the AI or the nationalization piece. Any questions, thoughts, or comments on this? Yes, Adil, go on.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know if what we have seen with the golden visas is also a new driver for the labor market.
There is. So it's not so much the golden visas only. There's a whole change in the immigration policy of the UAE. So
Correct.
you have everything from golden visas to freelancer visas to
Exactly.
more lucrative ways in which labor market has kind of opened up to people who might not
You're no
traditionally have
longer
been.
linked to the organization. Yeah.
Exactly. And that gives freedom of movement. So people can
Yes,
move around more freely, but that
indeed.
also means it's difficult for organizations to retain some of the people.
Indeed.
Previously, there was, ooh, if I lose my job, I'll lose my visa and I'll have to go back to a country that I came from. Now that no longer is a fear for a lot of the expatriates that make up the UAE labor market. So absolutely. And in fact, that is one of the things that we are going to add, we could potentially add over here in terms of another driver of the labor market. Great point, Adil. Thank you. The next one there is what we call as productivity paradox. And what is this? So now, more than ever, people are spending incredibly long time at work. So consistent overtime is a thing that a lot of people do. Ridiculously long working weeks, again, something that a lot of people do. In fact, we had a colleague, Smita, who was saying earlier, it's Friday today, and yet I'm getting to home at exactly the same time as I would on any other day. So, this sort of stuff means people are spending more time at work. However, although they are spending more time at work, the productivity in organizations, quite a lot of organizations, has actually gone down. So if people are spending more time at work, why are they not performing their best? And if they're not performing at their best, or if they're not as productive as they were previously, then that begins to create a demand for work that's not completed, a demand for work that is of a higher quality, a demand for work which is more stronger, or productivity that is better than previously was the case. So what's the reasons behind this, and why is it that people are not as productive in the workplace as they previously were? And there's a whole range of issues here as well. Are there something else to add there?
Honestly, I would love to know the answer and other colleagues' opinion in this part.
Yeah. So colleagues, what are your opinions? Please
But I
share.
would definitely concur with the productivity paradox.
Yeah. I'll give you two reasons and then others can add in more. So please use the chat or unmute and share, everyone else. What do you feel? Why do you think this productivity has gone down? Ruhi, the original Ruhi, do you want to tell me why your productivity went down? Because there's a very relevant reason within this for you.
I think because of this whole still the traditional way of thinking that 9 to 6 is very relevant is something which is causing this unnecessary extra time in workplace. To be honest, HRI system was introduced long back, but effectively implementation of it is not much in HR. Like I'm saying in my experience in this current company. So a lot of automation things which could be simplified is not simplified because of many people being worried about, okay, if AI is fully implemented, everything is systemized, you don't need that much of workforce. So instead, dragging work a lot, or it could be one of the reasons as well, because there is situation or cases I have where a team is very productive, they work only 6 hours and then they go back home. So I think maybe it's just a mindset. One thing is the mindset of 9 to 6 is a must.
Yeah.
Could be one of the reason, yeah.
Yeah. So there are two things you said there. How effective are our current processes and systems working? So you may have the best people there and they are there for the longest time. But if you're not giving them the right tools, if you're not giving them the right support, if you're not creating an environment where they can truly flourish, no matter how good your workforce is, they're not going to be giving their best to their workplace. They're not going to be as motivated as previously. Add to that the after effects of COVID. So during COVID, a lot of people were very used to working from home, working remotely, and their productivity levels hadn't dropped. Whereas now, when we are forcing people back into the workforce and we're coming back into the office, a lot of people are saying, I'm wasting my time sitting for 2 hours in traffic when I could have been productive sitting at home and doing the work. So there is a mindset shift as well, in terms of what the organizations expect versus what is it that the workers or the labor is looking for. And that sometimes creates discontent. And when there is dissatisfaction and discontent, it begins to, over time, have an impact on productivity levels. That resentment of expending that extra time at work kicks in. The other thing is, although people are spending really long time at work, how much wastage is there? And when I say wasted, it means time spent on coffee breaks, on cigarette breaks, on social media, in meetings which are absolutely pointless. All these sorts of things seem like somebody is busy, but actually the productivity levels are not that high, because what they are doing essentially is deviating the work, or for a moment deferring it rather than actually taking that on. So the couple of reasons. Burnout is another one. Changing preferences of people is another one. A whole host of reasons why potentially this productivity paradox exists. But it does, and there's a lot of research that says people are not as productive as they used to be, which means there is more demand and more time required to get things done. The last one, it is very, very hard to recruit right now, because for a lot of the jobs, especially the more specialist the skill set, the more trickier it is to find the most talented people in the workforce. And so there is a search for a hidden workforce. And towards the end of the conversation, I'll come back to what this hidden workforce might be. These are the people who are in the labor market, but they are not in the labor market. And so you really have to think about, okay, where else? If I've looked already and I've had a vacancy open for such a long time, I've got a lot of applicants applying for this, but yet I'm not able to fill the post with the best possible candidate. Where else can I look? And that hidden workforce is the answer to that. Can you give me some examples of what potentially could be in the hidden workforce? So Sidra, you do a lot of recruitment. If you can't find people where you expect to find them, where might you find them? Where else could you look? What other hidden places could you explore?
Honestly, I'm not sure of this one because mostly we are looking at like LinkedIn or like the platforms only.
Those are
So
all the obvious ones, right?
yeah, there are all the obvious ones. That's correct.
But the obvious ones are not hidden. So we have to look
Yeah,
elsewhere.
that's why
Yeah,
I'm saying that nothing is popping up in my mind for the hidden workforce at the moment.
yeah. That's not hidden. It is a good strategy, but not hidden. Thank you. Ruhi says headhunting from competitive companies, so poaching. That again, that's not a hidden one. It's been used for a very long time, Ruhi, where you look at others. Dina, did you have another one?
Actually, there are sometimes some employees like talent, but they do not show their CVs. So I think sometimes we should connect some people's talent in the competitive to check if they are available to switch to a new career or not.
Exactly. And so sometimes this is like Smita says, internal. You're looking internally to see if you can find these type of people. And when you do, and sometimes it is possible to do it, it's important to recognize that they bring in a skill set which might be perhaps unique. Now, with the internal, there are a couple of versions. Internal can mean people who are currently there already in your in your organization. It could also mean those who have left. So sometimes we call them boomerang employees, employees who used to work for you, they left, but now you are inviting them back or you want them to come back for a different kind of a role.
Again, the names of these terms.
I will put it over here in the chat. It's
Okay.
called boomerang employees. Adil, go ahead.
Thank you, Payal. Yeah, I just wanted to add one more thing regarding the search hidden workforce. I feel maybe in some organization there might be an element of, I won't say maybe an ageism. So there are a lot of people at a certain age they're not looked into.
Yeah.
Or maybe they have the experiences, but they would always prefer at least
Yeah.
a younger, maybe dynamic. They would at least assume workforce.
Yeah. And so this is one of those hidden spaces. You're absolutely right. So looking at the older employees or the ones who are retired, and that's where people might come back. So some people have said, you know what, I'm not ready to lose my person just yet. Can we extend their visa? And in some cases, even after the retirement age of 65, we have still been able to, keep people in the workforce for say 70, up to 70 years. It depends. But again, those older, more retired employees, or extending that retirement period so people can stay in the workplace longer might be one of those, provided you don't have discrimination based on age in the workplace. Absolutely. So, worth thinking about, where are you getting your talent from and what are some of those drivers that are impacting the workforce? Now, let's look at this concept of workforce planning. So, what is workforce planning? Workforce planning, or in this case, strategic workforce planning, actually is made up of three words: strategic, workforce, and planning. And we're going to unpick each of these words to make it very clear. Let's talk about the strategic word first. So every organization usually can be put up into three layers. So you've got the micro level at the bottom. So at micro level, what you're looking at pretty much is your individuals and teams level. So everything that takes place at the micro level is very hands-on. It's very operational in nature. People are literally doing the job. So that's the micro level. The next level up is what we call as the meso level. Now, meso level of the organization is where it's basically departmental level or functional level. So any decision made at the meso level has to be something that is having an impact on all the employees in a particular department or over a couple of different functions or a couple of different business units. So if micro level is individual level, very much hands-on and tactical, the meso level is more departmental level. So this is where it's kind of like the middle management layer of the organization. And then you've got the topmost layer, which is what we call as the macro level. So macro level is your strategic layer, where any decision or anything that's taking place at the macro level has an impact on the entire organization. So the first word of a strategic workforce planning is the word strategic.
Payal, we cannot hear you. You're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Can everyone else hear me as well? Can you give me a quick thumbs up if you can hear me? Or just let me know. Give me some
Yes.
indication you can continue to hear me. Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
Sounds clear.
Yeah. I was saying there are 3 layers in the organization. What did you hear until Adil? Can you just refresh me? Did
I
you
can
hear the
hear-
description?
I can hear you now, and I can see the presentation.
This slide is okay, perfect. So I was talking about that there are 3 layers in the organization: micro, which is at a team or an individual level; meso, which is at a departmental level; and macro, which is across the whole of the organization. My question to all of you was, if we are talking about strategic workforce planning, and if I were to give this particular slide a number, so 1 is micro level, 2 is the meso level, and 3 is the macro level. Put a number in the chat or unmute and share with me. At which level would you consider it to be strategic? Which level is the strategic layer? 2, 3 says Ruhi. 3 says Adil. 3 says the other Ruhi. So the temptation is to say 3, but here's the thing. When we are talking about true strategic workforce planning,
All
we
of them.
want it to be all of them, Dina. Thank you. That is it. Thank you, Maria. It is. Thank you, Indrajit. It has to be at all of these levels. So what we are really hoping in this particular instance for strategic workforce planning is that it will be across the board. So in other words, you want what's called as vertical integration and you want what's called as horizontal integration. Vertical integration is any strategy that's made as across the organization. So say, for example, at the big picture level, the strategic level, and the macro level, the organization says, we are going to grow, we are going to go into newer territories, we are going to set up a completely new branch or a new business unit or launch a new product line. If the strategic decision is one of growth, every single departmental layer has to work towards the element of growth. If the top level narrative is we need to improve our customer service, every single layer across the organization then has to work towards that organizational priority of improving customer service. If it is cost cutting or sort of resizing, and if it's about shrinkage, then across all layers there has to be that austerity measures and shrinkage that takes place. So the whole thinking over here is whatever you decide at any one of these layers has to permeate through all the levels. And your workforce plan has to be across each of these levels. That's part 1. It's not just it has to go vertically down, it's also horizontally. So say, for example, you realize, okay, we are going to enhance our customer service. That's a strategic priority. What does that mean for every department? It means every department has to really understand what drives their customer satisfaction and achieve that. So IT might be, we need better services so that customers are able to handle that. Logistics might say, we want to do our work quickly so that we basically meet our standards in a particular time. Quality assurance says you shouldn't make any mistake. There should be no errors, and therefore customers are going to be happy. You see how that same narrative of improving customer service has to be walked through across all those layers? That is called horizontal integration. For all of us who might be working in the HR space and the workforce planning space, if that is a priority, if customer service is a priority, then what you do in your recruitment, which is hire people with great customer service skills, because that's the organizational objective. What you do within learning and development, offer opportunities to enhance their customer service skills. So all your training programs will be about this. What do you do in rewards? You reward those people that demonstrate great customer service skills. So that horizontal integration piece basically means not only do you need to have it aligned across all layers of the organization, but every team across the board also needs to think strategically in terms of how are they going to achieve the organization's objectives through people. So this is the idea behind strategic workforce planning, and the fact that the word strategic means it's vertically and horizontally integrated across all layers, but also across all departmental areas and units. I'm going to pause over here. Any questions or comments from anyone? Anything anyone wants to say or share? Okay, fair enough. Good. I know a couple more people have joined in, so I'm just going to give you all further. So Sandeep, Smita, you guys have just joined in. I'm just going to enable your microphone. So if you want to ask any questions, you can have control as well. Yeah, so do connect and feel free to ask questions if you've got. Okay. All right, let's continue on. So this is what I wanted to show you when it comes to the first piece all around workforce planning. This is where the word strategic comes from. Go on, Smita, did you have a question? Smita? Okay, that's fine. I'm not sure if you had a question there. You can, by the way, you can unmute and speak. All right, all good. Perfect. Good. Right. Let's continue on. So where does the remaining words come from? When it comes to the word planning, now in planning, this means what is the horizon that you're looking at when it comes to your workforce. Now, a lot of organizations will do what we call as headcount planning or resource planning. This looks at immediately what does my business need. So today, what are my business requirements? In this particular year, what is it that we want? And so resource planning or headcount planning is quite common. A lot of people will say, well, this is a budget, this is the work that we need, these are the kind of skills that we need. Let's get the people that we want for today in order to deliver our business and in order to do our work for today. That's headcount planning. This is a very narrow sort of a perspective because you're only looking at the near future. The second layer is what we call as operational workforce planning. Operational workforce planning not only looks at today, but it also begins to forecast for the next budgeting cycle. So often, if resource planning is within 1 year's time, operational planning looks at a time scale of, let's say, 18 months to 1 year to 18 months. You're looking at the next budgeting cycle too, not just this year, even next year, what is going to be my workforce requirements? Now, if you want to be truly strategic in this approach, what we really want, though, is a much more longer period of time, which is where strategic workforce planning comes in. So the whole planning horizon associated over here is 3 to 5 years, a minimum of 3 to 5 years when it comes to workforce planning. So resource planning under 1 year, operational planning this year and the next budgeting year, strategic level workforce planning looks at a horizon of a minimum of 3 to 5 years from today. So when you are doing workforce planning, it's worthwhile thinking about what is your organization's focus. Are you focused on today? Are you focused on next year's budget? Or are you focused on a much more longer term period? Because what might be fit for purpose from your workforce for today may not necessarily be fit for purpose for your workforce, 2 to 3 years from now. And so strategic planning requires you to look at that longer term horizon. Now, this is where challenge comes in for people who might want to do workforce planning. If you're spending all your energy in meeting your resourcing needs for today, how are you going to bring in elements of future thinking? This is where a lot of organizations have barriers. Can you tell me some of the barriers which you or your organization might be facing when it comes to thinking about the long term? What are the potential issues here? You all have control over your microphones. Go on, Smita. Go ahead.
Not proper forecasting. They have no idea like what will be the expansion plan for a longer term. So
Yeah.
that
And so that's when it gets tricky, isn't it? What if you don't know what your longer term plan is? So does it mean you can't do workforce planning? No,
in
of
my
course not.
yeah, in
Go on.
my current organization, it is like as and when. So if there is any resignation, so all of a sudden there will be a request. But there is no for a longer term. If we'll ask, so our HODs they don't have replies for it, and then there is no idea. Like if you'll just go beyond like 3 years, 3 to 5 years of plan, so there is no answer for that.
Exactly. And this is what makes workforce planning very challenging. So how do you do? Okay, you can say, look, I know, I understand you don't have a plan or idea of 3 to 5 years from now. Let's fill out the positions for now. Let's start to forecast and build for next year. What do you think might be there? But let's spend 5% of our time thinking about the future of our business. You don't have to spend your entire time doing that future level thinking, but a little bit can go a long way. So Ruhi says lack of business development data available for HR is another challenge. So if you want to forecast but you don't have any data, that's tough. Where are you going to find some of your details from? Indrajit says it should start from the business plan. Absolutely. But if the organization doesn't have a business plan, what might that look like? Indrajit, did you want to come in with something else and explain that a little bit more?
Well, yeah. Look, HR cannot plan in isolation. So if we have to do a strategic workforce planning, it has to have with the organizational business plan. So if an organization has a 2 to 5 years business plan, or say 12 to 24 months business plan, like for instance in the technology companies, I come from a technology background, so I have worked in software companies. So the planning is for 2 to 3 years, not 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
You plan it based on the organizational business plan, and then accordingly you do that. So
Exactly.
every piece of puzzle will fall in place in terms of resources, in terms of operational capabilities,
Yeah.
and that in a strategic outlook in terms of the skill set, upskilling, reskilling, all of that.
Exactly. Absolutely on the right over there, Indrajit. Thank you. One of the things I will say is, okay, saying 2 to 3 years is the time frame we feel comfortable, not 3 to 5. So what happens is you get your 2 to 3 years time scale, you start moving on that journey. 6 months in, you do a check again, because then you should have again a little bit more forecast for the next 2 to 3 years.
True.
So this is what expands it. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So there are checkpoints. So it should take once every organization, there is a maybe it happens in April every year, if it is April to March financial year, or if it's Jan to December, then it should happen somewhere in November, December of each year for the next year. So it might take for HR to come up with the whole plan, maybe in 3 to 4 weeks, say by end of Jan, for Jan to December financial year. And then there is a checkpoint, maybe mid of March, or maybe somewhere in April first week. And then there are checkpoints where you see if we are on the right track or not, and if there are impediments, why are those, and all that check and balances should be part of your planning.
Exactly. This is what is different now, because strategic workforce planning is also very agile and adaptable. Exactly as you say, the more you go forward, the more you horizon scan, the more you realize your plan needs to be tweaked, and then you keep going ahead on that rolling journey. Thank you, Indrajit. Adil, did you want to come in with something else there?
Yes, I did want to add, which is sometimes people do, or some organizations do plan. However, I think they lack a bit of identifying some of the gaps while they are planning. So it's irrelevant if it's 1, 2, or 3 to 5 years. So you do have some organizations that might have some underemployment. So not fully utilizing the people they already have, for example.
Yes. And this is what we are talking about. We're talking about not just planning for the future, but really maximizing what you currently have there. Thank you. Maria, did you want to come in with something else? I can see that you put it in the chat too. Go ahead, explain to us what you were saying there.
Yeah, in my experience, we do strategic workforce planning 3 to 5 years. We review backward and forward 3 to 5. But sometimes it is not enough, because the stakeholders are, for example, doubling their expectations. Once we present what we have right now, then they say, "Oh, it's achievable. Let's make it twice now. Instead of 1 million, make it 2 million." So we recalculate. So it becomes, it's like struggling and grasping for the win.
Exactly. And those unrealistic expectations are very, very different. Indrajit has added on to say, Adil has a point, but we in HR could help business in identifying those gaps in people, which is why you're on this program. Absolutely. And that's the whole thing. So the agile way of thinking about workforce planning is knowing and recognizing that these gaps will always exist. It's knowing and recognizing that the things outside are always going to change. And it's knowing and recognizing that whatever you do in HR cannot be in isolation. It has to be aligned with where the organization wants to go. So as long as you're keeping yourself on top of all those three things, the planning horizon extends, and the strategic element of workforce planning comes in. All right, let's talk about the workforce now. So we've spoken about the first one, strategic. We've spoken about the last one, planning. Let's look a little bit more in terms of what does the middle piece in terms of workforce mean. So CIPD often tends to say that workforce planning is about getting these 7 rights absolutely nailed down, which is you want your right organizational capability in an organization that's of the right shape, with the right size of workforce, in the right location, at the right time, in the right cost, at the right risk. So these 7 rights make up workforce planning. I'm going to talk about each one of these in a bit more detail so you understand what we mean by that. So I'm going to start with the one right in the center called as capability. So usually when we say, does your organization have capability to achieve your organizational objectives? The first thing that people think about over here is skills. Do my employees have the core skills, core competencies needed to do the job for today? And that's a great starting point. You also need to ask that question in terms of, do they have the right skills and capabilities for tomorrow, for a couple of years from now? And if not, what's the gap? How big is the gap and how do we start filling that in? So that's the part of the workforce planning process. You're trying to figure out what is your current capability like, what is the future capability expectation, and where is the gap in those capability piece. Now, the first answer though there in terms of skills, competencies is just one part of capability. With the capability, you need other things as well. So your organization's capabilities, right, not just when you get the right people with the right experience, but you also need them to work in a place which provides them with systems and tools that actually work. It works in a place or in a culture where they feel like they can actually put to use what they know or what they learn. If you have the best talented employee or a candidate that has joined your company, but you don't support them, a line manager doesn't encourage them, the systems and policies are not in place, the data that they need to do their job is not there, the tools that they need for their job is not there, there is no point of having that skill because you're not creating an environment where that capability can flourish. So when we talk about right capability, what we are really looking at is, do the people have the right skills and knowledge, of course, but also do they have the right support system around them? Do they have the right work environment around them within which they can flourish? And so this is where workforce planning is not just one thing that one person in a particular team or an organization can do. It is something that every single part of the organization needs to collaborate on. So you in HR could sit there and say, yep, I know exactly the right kind of person who's going to be able to do the job. But if the line manager is not great at keeping them, or the relationship between the line manager and the employee is strained, they are not going to stay, which means you're back to square one in terms of missing that capability for your organization. So this is what we mean by capability. Not only do you need the right skills and competencies, you need the right environment for those skills and competencies to truly flourish. And the focus has to be not just on today, also what you might need from capability perspective in the future. So that's the first one in the center over there. Any thoughts or questions on this? Okay. Let's go through the remaining rights. So the second right over there is having the right size. Now this is exactly what we mean. Do I have the right number of people that I need? So for different teams, different roles, not only now, but will I have the right number of people in the future? So it's worth thinking about both your current need as well as the future need. And the right number is the one where you are able to go from exactly what you need now to exactly what you will need in the future. So the size piece is relatively easy. Location one is an interesting one because there are 2 branches to this. One piece is, have I got the person in the right geographical location? So I have a shop in Sharjah. I need a person to work in Sharjah. Are they available in Sharjah? That is a geographical fit. However, in the organization structure, in your org chart, is that job placed correctly is also a question. So sometimes you might feel like, I really, really need a manager in this team. And so you get a manager, but you see like there's nothing changed in the team. And you realize actually we didn't need a manager. We just needed a better, we just needed 2 more hands to work. Didn't have to be at managerial level. We probably needed 2 people who would probably get the same as what the manager was getting, but we didn't need one person with a senior level capability. We needed two of the more operational workers. So strategically, is the job placed in the correct position? Strategically, are you able to attract the best person to do that job in your structure, organization structure? So there are two parts to this location piece. The third one is time. And so time again has two angles. Do I have the workforce and the skill that I need when I need them? And do I have them for the entire duration that I need them for? So what happens sometimes is you get the right person on board, and they are there when you need them. However, the project that you got for them is delayed. So it starts a bit late and it finishes a bit late. But by that time, your workforce is either not there or they are there and they've got nothing to do. That is where you got your timing wrong. Or sometimes you might get somebody into your job, but then that project just goes longer and longer and longer and longer. And you had got somebody on a fixed term contract for a certain period of time, not for that extra wastage. And so again, the time piece was not right there. So this is what we mean by the first three. I'm going to stop over here and take questions or comments from you guys. So we've looked at capability, size, location, and time. I'm going to talk about the remaining three in a bit, but before I do that, any questions, any comments? What are you thinking about? What sort of questions are coming in your mind? Okay, none, that's a good thing. I will continue on. I've got one comment in the chat there. Oh, you're fully agreeing. Brilliant, Adil. Thank you. Right, let's look at the remaining rights and then see what happens. Now, next one is cost. Now, this is a very interesting one because when you think about the cost, normally we says, okay, what's the size of my pocket? What's my budget? And while that's a good question to ask, it's not necessarily the question you should be asking for right cost. So say, for example, I've got 100 dirhams, and for my 100 dirhams, I can get 10 people and pay each of them 10 dirhams. So I've got 10 people, each costing 10 dirhams to do the job. And that's the way I'm staying in the right cost piece. However, I don't get all of my work done. I don't get the kind of productivity that I deserve. I don't get anybody kind of managing them. And so you might say, actually, you know what? Although I have 100 dirhams, the better way for me to spend this would have been to get one manager and probably 8 members of staff. So I should have spent 20 dirhams on giving it to one person who would become the team leader or the manager, and then have 8 people working underneath them. That would have been more value for money. Or somebody else would say, actually, you know what? If I have 100, I don't need so many people. What I need is about 6 people to do the job. I need, so 60 dirhams would go in that, 20 dirhams to train them up, and then 20 dirhams to have a manager who can look after them. So you might think, you know what, the best way for me to spend my budget is to have a combination of roles across different layers, but also an element of building their skill set. So this is what right cost is about. It's not just saying how big is my envelope and therefore what can I buy for it. It's what's the best thing I can get for the money that I have. What is going to give me the most value for money for what I'm trying to achieve in the organization. And that's what the right cost means. Do you get value for money? The next one there, right risk. And this is often something that organizations have a very tough time identifying. So every workforce comes with a risk. Some organizations will say, you know what, for us, it's okay. We are willing to take the risk of not having all our employees there as long as we stay in the budget. So sometimes budget is a priority and it doesn't matter whether you have your full workforce or not. Even if there are gaps, that's okay. You're willing to take the risk of not having a full workforce as long as you stay in the budget. Other times, organizations will say, no, I can't do this. We need our services not to be impacted at all. So we need the people there, we need them fully trained, we need them ready to go, and therefore we are okay with the risk that that might cost more. But as long as our services are impacted and as long as we are working at full operational capacity, we are good with that. But that costs more. So sometimes the risk is with a surplus where you have more people than you need. Sometimes the risk is with a deficit where you have fewer people than you actually need. But every organization has an appetite towards this. Some organizations will have a risk appetite towards surplus, others will have risk appetite towards a deficit. And you've got to figure out what is the right risk for your organization. And then the last piece over there is the shape. How is your organization laid out? Have you got the right structure and shape of the workplace? A lot of organizations look like pyramid. They are thinner on the top and broader at the bottom, as in they have fewer people in the senior strategic roles, but more people in the junior or the lower layers of the organization. So these are what the 7 rights are all about. Any questions here?
Can you please repeat right shape?
Right shape?
Yes.
So right shape is how is your organization structure? So some organizations will be shaped like a pyramid where they have fewer people on the higher grades, but more people on the lower grades. Other organizations will say, you know what, for us that pyramid structure does not work. We want a more matrix type of a structure.
Okay.
The
Organization
shape.
structure.
Yeah,
Okay.
the organizational structure or the organization, the way it's laid out.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions from anyone else? Okay, so now we know what strategic means, vertical and horizontal integration. We know now what workforce means, getting these 7 rights in order. And third part is planning. And we also know when you're thinking about a strategic workforce planning, the longer term planning horizon is the one that we are after. So a reflective question for all of you. Which do you think might be the most challenging to get right? Which of these is probably going to be difficult for your organization to get right? Go on, Aisha.
I have something. I don't know whether it's out of topic, but the right shape in the sense like pyramid or whatever, if the managers are more and the employees are less, and if the employees are more and the managers are less, what is the difference or what is the benefit or the drawback of these things? Can you just
So
brief
it's not so much the drawback of it, but what you have to see is it working for me? As in, does my organization achieve its objectives by the kind of shape it has? If one manager is able to look after 20 people and there is no problems and everything is working fine, that shape works for you. But other teams might say, you know what, I can't have that. We need, for every one team, we just need like one team leader, or we don't even want a manager. All we want is subordinates or peers. So every organization's right shape would depend on what it is that they are trying to do. And there is no pros and cons. Well, there are pros and cons to each one of them, but each one of them is dependent on what your organization is trying to achieve and whether the way you have structured yourself works or not. If it doesn't, that's why you get restructuring in an organization because they're trying to remove duplication or avoid confusion, whatever, and then you change your shape.
Okay, thank you so much.
That's all right. Adil says risk and costs are probably the most difficult ones to get. Dina, go ahead.
Actually, my organization do the two strategic. First, we
Yeah.
work as a flat organizations. We have like one managers for like 20 or 50, 20
Yeah.
or 30 employees. Then after actually after COVID, we started to make functional department like finance department, compliance, quality assurance, regulatory, and that cost the company more. And the operations, because the strategic for the company changed, and even slight cost more. This is the strategic for the company, so we should align with that. Even
And so
this, yes, even we have the same profit for the company, and we have the same turnover. It's like nothing changed. Even we change the functionals and have a lot of operation added to the operations, and we have like we try to make like the chain for the managers like low make the low pressure for the managers, and the chains like less between 5 to 10 employees, but still that we have like turnover and the cost high for the company. But this is strategic for the company. The company strategic needs functional for each department.
Yeah, and this is it, right? You will know, and your organization is the best judge to say, is this working or not? But like Indrajit, it's all linked, and everything has an impact on each other and on the planning. So if your cost was the driver and you started changing the cost, everything else would change. If you thought, okay, I need to change the structure, again, everything else would change because along with that comes everything else. Your risk appetite changes. They are so interconnected that somewhere or the other, something or the other needs to change the moment you change any one of this, which is why you have to go through and review all 7 of these rights for any specific driver that makes one of them change as well. Lovely. Thank you, Maria, for your reflection as well. So each one of them for every organization is going to be different. So I wanted to explore this with you and show you the 7 rights and what the word strategic workforce and planning mean. Now, there are different tools that you can use for this particular process. And certain tools I've got over here on the screen, but it's about understanding where are you getting your people from? You know, what is the supply of your talent looking like? And the things that you can do to figure out what is that supply like. Similarly, it's about figuring out where is my demand coming from? What is happening? What is changing? What is on the horizon? And the more you look at all of these things, the more these tools come into play. So I've got some of them over here, which is the steeple analysis or the PESTLE analysis, SWOT analysis, looking at your organizational metrics like turnover rates, gap analysis, demand planning, scenario planning. All these tools have a place in itself. One of the best things to do, and I want to talk about one of these tools, which is scenario planning specifically, because in the world that we live in right now, it is so difficult for a plan for the future. And you might go there thinking, I really don't know what the future holds. I can't see in the whole chaos of and the complexity of the world where this would be headed. And so you feel like stuck. Where do I go from here? You know, I can't do my workforce planning because I don't know what the future holds. So scenario planning is one of those tools which can be very, very helpful in this case, because what you're saying is, I don't know one definite answer, but what I can guess is what's the best case scenario, or what's the worst case scenario, or what's the most likely scenario. So for example, I have 8 vacancies right now, and I'm trying to recruit for all of these 8 vacancies, but I'm not finding anybody. The best case scenario is in the next 1 month, these 8 vacancies close. Worst case scenario is 6 months later as well, all of my 8 vacancies are open. Most likely though, is that I will close at least 2 or 3 in the next month, and then hopefully over the next 3 or 4 months, I will have closed all of them. So when you start thinking about scenarios like that, it gives you a way to start doing your workforce planning based on those outcomes. If I can only fill 1 position in the next month, what am I going to do for the gaps in the remaining 7 positions? If I'm able to fill all 8, okay, there is no gap, and what do I do for that? What if I'm not able to fill all of them and I can only fill half of them? What can I do as a backup plan for that? That's what workforce planning lets you do. It starts you thinking about eventualities and possibilities, which helps you then manage your organization's risk. And that's where these tools come in handy. So I'm going to leave this slide over here, because if you are interested in finding out more, you can look at or look up these tools and see how they take it further. So some of you are on the CIPD Level 5 program with me, and we've been looking at some of these tools as a part of this. But this is what I was going to say for those of you that are not studying this program, but if you're interested in this particular topic, there are various ways in which you can take this forward. There's a lot of research you can do on each of these tools and how this process works. There are formal programs that you can do on this as well. CIPD offers one, which is an accredited program. You can do it as a self-study program, or you can go into one of the B2C programs, which allows you to be as a group of a cohort and go through this over 4 sessions, which are all 1 day long. So 4 days to learn this in more depth. How do you do each stage of the process, so on and so forth. So there is so much to learn in strategic workforce planning. There is so much that you can further explore over there. The question is, what of this is relevant for you, and where would you like to explore it further? So The last part of today, colleagues, is open floor for you to ask me questions, for you to think about your comments, for you to share anything that you've learned or get for clarification for something that you didn't get to ask before. Over to you all. How did you find this session? What questions are burning in your mind? Go on. Go on, Smita.
Yeah, Payal, I want to ask you how we can help managers in helping HR to do workforce planning or forecasting their required manpowers for
But this is the thing, Smita.
approximately a period of a 6 to 1 year at least. How we can
Yeah,
help them? Hmm.
but this is the thing, Smita. Can you do it for them?
No, but at least we can provide a guideline for them.
There you go. That's your answer. So one choice is you provide guidelines. What would you include in that guideline?
Yeah, that's my question. What should I be including?
So it depends on what you already do. And this is where you have to start prompting them. The easiest question to ask is, okay, what kind of work are you going to be doing in the next year? How many people do you need for this? What are the top 5 or 10 skills that you're going to require from your team in the next year? How many people do you have right now? How many of these will be needed in the future? What jobs are changing? What jobs are not working? What things are coming into? Where is your new demand coming from? So the more you ask them questions like that and give them prompts for thinking, the more they are in a position where they can start saying, ah, okay, I need to think about this before I put all of this together. But this is the thing, right? We can only be handholders because workforce planning very much lies with them. What we can give is guidelines or templates or tools or suggestions of how they do it or a list of questions or prompts. But it is the managers that own this, which is why that vertical and horizontal integration is so crucial.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got that. But actually, I'm also thinking at the same time, like how to simplify. Because see, HR is my subject, so probably I'll understand and like I can work on it very comprehensively. But
Yeah.
like when we discuss with managers, especially probably they might understand, but they might not be interested to allocate that much of time in it
Yeah.
because
And
they
so
may
this
feel that it is a waste of time.
This is it. So you will get a lot of pushback where people feel like, oh, it's too complex, it's too difficult, or I don't need to do it. And the thing is, you have to talk to them in a language that works for them. So say if I was a restaurant manager and you went and told me, oh, you need to do strategic workforce planning and tell me, as a restaurant manager, what you're going to need. That language doesn't work for them. But if you tell them, or you ask them questions like, when is the restaurant most busiest? How are you
Okay.
staffing those most busiest days? Or what do you do when your business is not doing as well? What is your projection of how much growth do you want to see in the restaurant? If you start talking in their language and putting these workforce planning questions in a wording that works for them, they'll begin to see that one, you are genuinely interested. Two, this is not about you or completing a box for HR. This is about them being able to deliver on their business outcomes.
Great.
There's a language that you use over there. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Ruhi's question, I wanted to ask about succession planning that falls under tools or its strategic approach or a different topic altogether. So, Ruhi, what we've spoken about over here so far is what is strategic workforce planning. What we haven't spoken about is once you understand where the gaps are in the organization, what do you do about it? Because over there, there's a whole range of options. So let's say I realize, this is my workforce needs, this is what I need. There's a big gap. I have very few things compared to what I actually need. And so you start saying, okay, where am I going to get this extra from? Where am I going to find the missing people? Where am I going to find the missing skills? And this is where your solutions to workforce planning gaps come into play. So once you identify what type of a gap do you have, you then have to start thinking about what are my choices. And there are what we call as the 7 Bs: buy, borrow, build, bought, balance, bind, all sorts of things like that, which allow you to start saying, okay, what am I going to do to fill my workforce gap? So say if it is buying, buy your talent in the sense there's a gap, I have a vacancy, I can go outside and source somebody for it. That's what a buy would look like. Borrow would be, I don't need somebody for a very long time. Why don't I go and get somebody from a different department for a short time to cover this need? Or why don't I get an agency worker to come and temporarily help with my gap? So that would be borrowing, where you get somebody for the short term. Building is where succession planning falls in. Building is where you're saying, okay, this is what I have, this is what I need. There's a gap in skills in people. So let me take my time to develop them, to grow them, to plan for succession and get them ready for my need. And so building is very much about enhancing the skill set of your current workforce through succession planning or talent management to get them to that layer. And similarly, there are the other the other 6 Bs as well, which you could use. So that's where succession planning falls in terms of how you close or narrow those gaps between your demand and supply. And there are a lot of other techniques as well. Brilliant. Any other questions? Any other thoughts? So Adil says, what workforce trends in 2025 should HR leaders monitor or anticipate? Very, very good question. So kind of like what we did with the first slide, and I'm going to go back to this. Some of these trends are labor market trends, but within this, there are also things that we are seeing in the workforce. So here's a question for you. What are some of the things that you're hearing from in the labor market? What are people looking for? Those are the trends you need to be aware of. So if somebody is doing recruitment a lot, you will know what candidates are asking for. Can you give me some suggestions of what are the kind of trends or kind of things that people are asking for these days? What do they want? Your applicant expectations is one trend that you need to look for. Go on, Dina.
Work-life balance.
Work-life balance, yeah. Remote work, says Smita. Aisha, what were you going to say?
Yeah, from real estate industry, they are asking like only Monday they can come for a meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very specific requirements like that. Yeah. Adil, what about AI? What are you saying over there? AI is a trend and AI is a driver. Go on, tell me more. What were you saying?
Yeah, it could be maybe integrating certain tools or platforms maybe that would use the services instead of, I don't know, maybe I noticed that an organization, they're asking, are you able to identify new tools for recruitment, for example,
Yeah.
instead of using the old ways of maybe Oracle or SAPs in terms of
Yeah.
HRIS. So
Yeah. So it is one of the trends, but I wouldn't call it just AI. So AI is a bit limited. It's not artificial intelligence only. There's a couple of things associated with that. One is the willingness to change and adapt constantly, whether that's technology or otherwise. That's one of the trends that's expected. The other thing is resilience. How strong are you when things around you are completely changing constantly? That's another thing which people are looking for. Also, how willing are you to learn and upskill yourself? That's another trend that's impacting a lot of people in the workforce, because not everybody is comfortable learning. Not everybody wants to learn. Not everybody is keen to adopt all of these things. So that is another trend that kind of impacts your workforce. But the big one is critical thinking. You need people in the workplace who are not just machines. So even if AI does come into play, the one thing it cannot replace is the ability to think around a particular subject or a particular topic. And so pretty much all of these trends you have to take with a pinch of salt, because your organization might be an exception to it. Your particular workforce might be an exception for it. There might be another trend which really impacts certain people in certain roles. So every industry, every role, the skill set that is there can be different in different variety of ways. And this is where even if there are some trends and you ask this question, like what are the 2025 trends to anticipate? Everything that you think as a trend may not even apply to your organization. So the ability to use that critical thinking in and saying, does this apply for me? Will this be relevant or is there something else? Is one of the things that you've got to be on top of. The one thing I will say though, no longer can HR be complacent. No longer can we be firefighting. That's the one thing that's significantly changing after AI and COVID, which is there is an expectation that those of us that work in HR are forward thinkers, business focused, evidence based, analytical and critical thinking individuals. We are not just paper pushers, which is what HR used to be for a longest period of time, right? Admin, paper, pushing, payroll, those sorts of things. Those days are gone because computers can easily take that. What it can't take is your ability to connect with the organization, the ability to make a difference and add value. So, more than anything else, the trend is stay on top of your game. Learn, evolve, change, and don't be afraid to ask the tough questions to your organization and to yourself. The more people are doing this, the better and stronger they will be in terms of their career and professional growth. That's the trend that we really need to monitor. How are we changing in line with what's changing around us? Other questions, thoughts? Ashwati, what about you? What are you thinking around?
It's quite like challenging. Like it depends upon like how it can be, because when you showed that 7 style of stars, yeah, right to choice, right to risk,
Yeah.
and all, it
Yeah.
keeps on like, for me, like when our company is into training industry, for each role, like we have content developers, we have trainers, a lot of set of trainers, then they are bilinguals, then there's lot set of like sales team. Until and unless like there is a mandate 6 months of probation where we understand, okay, so there's a lot of cost from the time of recruitment till the whole process is done, and when that candidate does not fit into it, okay, again the time is gone, the money is gone, everything is gone. And like you said, after one point they come up with a thing of like, okay, can I locate, can I do work from home? Certain tasks cannot be done work from home, even though we give all the access, because at the end you need to be with your team member, your manager, to understand like what are they looking out for. So for me it's like everything is there for our industry, like for especially for mine, it's a risk of cost, time, say, shape, size, everything is there. So I cannot say
Yeah.
like individual thing matters. So, and also if we don't do a right recruitment, whole process is like there's a waste. So
But you see, so this is one angle to it. Recruitment and using all your techniques to recruit the right person is one way of it. Strategic workforce planning says, great, you're recruiting, but are you looking at your leakage?
yeah, exactly.
Because if you're able to stop people from leaving, then you probably don't need to get into that cost of hiring people so much. So
Yeah.
turnover, retention, how are you managing that becomes a big part of strategic workforce planning too. And sometimes the strategy is not where can I hire from and how do I keep this going? Sometimes the strategy is what do I do to stop or reduce the number of people leaving my workplace? So it is complex and it is all interconnected as well. Absolutely. Thank you. Sidra, how about you? What are you thinking about? How did you find this topic?
I found it really interesting, but challenging at the same time as well, because I have never done this. So I think honestly we should start it. It might be challenging in the beginning, but then definitely at the end of the day it will be like worth it. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm thinking right now.
Thank you. Well, in that case, we have come to an end of this particular webinar. Go on, Adil. Something else to say?
Yeah, can we get maybe the slides, maybe a recording of the session?
So I know the session is being recorded. I will have to check with my colleagues to make sure. I think they usually send the recording out, by the way. The way you got the link to this, the recording will come through that. I am not sure about the slide deck. I can ask and make sure that you get
Sure,
a
I
copy.
understand. If possible,
Yeah.
then thank you. If not, again, thank you.
You're most welcome. Lovely to meet you, Adil.
Totally my pleasure. Thank you so much.
No problem. Lovely to meet you as well, Inderjeet. Everybody else I know, but the two of you
Pleasure
are
meeting you.
new. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Pleasure
All the
meeting
best.
you, and it was really
Same
good.
here. I'm
Yeah.
glad you enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank
Everyone
you.
else, have a fabulous Friday. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. And thank you so much for bearing with us at the start when we had a little bit of a technical glitch. Wishing you all a really, really amazing weekend and enjoy strategic workforce planning. See you.
Thank you.
Happy
Thank you.
weekend.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank
Happy
you.
weekend,
Bye
everyone.
bye.
Bye.
Bye. Take care. See you, everyone.